For the newly indoctrinated, Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files follows the story of a professional wizard in Chicago. We've started our podcast as a way to help break down the series' most important moments, characters, and lore. This is McAnally's Dresden Files Pubcast by Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.
Welcome to the McAnally's Pubcast, brought to you by Free Flow Rambling. This is episode 8.1, Put a Ring on It. My name is Tansenn, and I'm joined by Maggie.
Hello, hello.
And Jess.
Hi.
Harry Dresden has faced some pretty terrifying foes during his career. Giant scorpions, oversexed vampires, psychotic werewolves. It comes with the territory when you're the only professional wizard in the Chicago area phone book. But in all Harry's years of supernatural sleuthing, he's never faced anything like this. The spirit world has gone postal. All over Chicago, ghosts are causing trouble, and not just of the door-slamming, boo-shouting variety. These ghosts are tormented, violent, and deadly. Someone, or something, is purposely stirring them up to wreak unearthly havoc. But why? And why do so many of the victims have ties to Harry? If Harry doesn't figure it out soon, he could wind up a ghost himself.
So, Happy New Year, burn some buildings, whatever. Before we get into the real Grave Peril book, I just want to talk really quick about the overarching universe in general.
Ooh, exciting.
Yes, I'm very excited, okay?
Lay it on us.
So, we've spoken very briefly before about how, we're super sure that time travel is coming, okay? And
You have, yeah.
it's confirmed by Jim, okay? Grave Peril, confirmed by Jim, is a decision in this book is what is the butterfly effect. It's one of Harry's decisions in Grave Peril that is responsible for the rest of the series going the way it goes. And generally speaking, when a lot of people have trouble getting into Stormfront and Full Moon, people tell them to start at Grave Peril. If you want to come back later, you can, but the series starts at Grave Peril.
Yeah.
And no spoilers, but when we get to N, you see why Stormfront and Full Moon were so important to the rest of the series, but it's fair enough to say that, yeah, Stormfront and Full Moon were a little bit of novels on their own, but from Grave Peril onward, you've got this overarching story that never really wraps up and ends.
And if you listen to the audiobooks, Butcher himself had a little intro basically saying as much, too. He's like, for a lot of people, this is where it all ramps up and stuff, yeah.
Exactly. So, knowing that this is not book one, but that this is the big chunk of the beginning for Dresden.
The beginning of the end.
Beginning of the end.
The catalyst, the fulcrum.
I want to, point out that we should all be looking for what decision it is that Harry makes that is the butterfly effect for the rest of the series. And typically speaking, I think the majority of our viewers have read Changes, Battleground, etc. I believe the vast majority are caught up. Mm-hmm. So knowing all of the events that are coming and knowing that it all starts right now and can be pinpointed in this book, that's something that I'm going to be bringing up later on when we get to those moments about the certain moments that I think it's going to be, and if you guys are reading anything, obviously. But the next book that will be coming out after Battleground is now going to be 12 Months, which is a different sort of version of the book that we've been reading so far.
The title, not the timeline.
The title will be 12 Months. And it's going to be, instead of one weekend, we're going to be getting an overview of a year. Which obviously, if you've read Battleground, you know that
it's not.
Mab says, we'll pick back up in 1 year, right? So we get a quick overview of everything that happens in that year, and then who knows how far into it'll go after that year.
Yeah.
But we know the book coming after that is Mirror Mirror, which is named after a Star Trek episode where the crew has to fight their evil versions. And it's all eye patches and goatees and et cetera, and it is I never watched Star Trek, but from my understanding, it is cult classic, best, one of fan favorite episodes or something like that. It's a big deal in the Star Trek universe, apparently.
Makes sense, and I feel bad because I probably have seen it. We did watch a lot of Star Trek, and I know my brothers, but I'm not instantly oh yeah, I remember this and this and this, so I have to go look it up because I'm pretty sure
Go watch Mirror Mirror. I'm not going to.
Can we pause for a moment? And I'm pretty sure I have it on a download somewhere.
Well, it's okay because it's also going to be drawing from the Buffy episode, The Wish.
Love that one!
Which is when Cordelia wishes that Buffy had never come to Summerdale?
Sunnydale?
Buffy Summers in Sunnydale.
That's the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And obviously it kind of creates this evil timeline because, the hell mouth that they're sitting on obviously functions a lot easier without a vampire slayer
right on top
on top of it.
Yeah.
So essentially, we get a lot of the beginnings of that in this book. And there's I really want to talk about Battleground, but in Peace Talk and Battleground, Skin Games, like the much later books coming after Changes, there's a lot of continuity issues where people are pointing out, like, this doesn't make sense to what you said last time.
Yeah.
And
I
that's,
had a
for
few of
me,
those moments, yeah.
I feel is further proof of the timeline being shaken up. That's why I feel like that's proof that it's already happened at some point in the books.
Not just a simple continuity error or flip, missed an editing, that's all intentional, yeah.
And there was a very subtle line in this book that proves that maybe the timeline started changing here.
A lot sooner than we thought.
A lot sooner than we thought.
And you know what? There's definitely a lot of scope for that because Butcher has always said he had, like I remember early on when I got into this series, right, or like I say, I think when I went to the store, I think the first 4 books were out when I could get my hands on the first physical copies after listening to the first 1 or 2 audios. And yeah, so like right then I started getting a lot more into, following it and what was going on. And like I say, Butcher was still, not quite as famous and worldly and still had time to like pop onto the internet and chat rooms and things. And yeah, I remember him saying, sort of, because I was like, this book is not like, you never want it to end, right? You're like, I hope this goes, but like, well, not like just dragged out forever. And I remember, early on being excited because he's like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got ideas for like the first, like 20 or so books, right? So now that we're getting closer to that end with 17 books out. But yeah, exactly. That was like right, like you say, when he had like Grave Peril and Summer Night and stuff like that, right? So it's like, you've alluded to that sort of before in the past of, like a throwaway comment in Stormfront. Was it ever really a throwaway comment because he sort of had plans, right? But it makes you, like you say, you start feeling it more and more now, right? That not just like, ooh, hey, I can use that later, but like so much more intention behind inserting those things in and a specific plan as opposed to a laying groundwork. Who knows if it'll ever come up.
Yep. And seeing as how you get the majority of the full cast is pretty much finally introduced in this book.
Yeah.
There's a few more that prop up, but the vast majority of the main cast will now be introduced in this book, and then we go from there. It's very exciting to see like where you can pinpoint everyone else's decisions as well, because, Harry doesn't work alone. He's got a lot of allies or adjacent allies, etc., etc.
Yeah, much as it feels like, or he seems to think he does sometimes, it's, yeah, exactly. He's never actually quite as alone as... Yeah.
So it's just something that I want to point out before we really get into Grave Peril, that this is... What is it? Doctor Strange says in order to defeat Thanos, there's like 14,605,000 chances to defeat Thanos, and only one of them is the timeline where they win.
Yeah.
So, this is pretty much like we're going to see, did Harry choose that one or not right now?
That is this is fun. I like this because, like I say, I've read the book so many times, but I've never looked through them with this exact same filter. As they say, I've enjoyed the books. I've enjoyed finding new aspects or thoughts or tidbits that I didn't pick up the first time around for whatever reason, but I'm like I say, I never went out seeking the theories and the hypotheses and the fan chatter about it. So it's kind of exciting that this is the aspect that you have on so much of this and that you're bringing it because it's so much more exciting. Like, again, I'm like, I love this book and I love this and I love this, but I'm like, there's still new things for me to experience and look at and still a whole other like lens and filter to look at it all through now, even though I'm like reading through it again and I'm like, oh yeah, I know this and I know how this relates to that and I know what happens because of this, but it's like...
No, I'm torn because part of me is because I've been going through with this reread and just going as we go. So this would be my first reread, and I don't remember majority of the books. Like there's a lot that I don't remember, but the way you're talking about it makes me just want to skip ahead. So fast.
I want to know what happens now. Wait, what? Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, even just reading Stormfront and Full Moon this time around with the podcast made me appreciate them a lot more. Going slowly through them and picking them apart is like actually like, you know what? I actually kind of do enjoy Stormfront and Full Moon now. Like, it might actually be a part of my rereads in the future.
It almost makes me, I almost feel like that's a little, like, what's the word? Not treasonous, but for you
treacherous?
No, not treacherous. No, but like not betrayal or whatever, but for you to say that and be like, because I mean, again, I always quite enjoyed them, right? And I've always said, they get better and better and better. And I mean, but it's just so funny. I'm like, you can't say like you didn't like Stormfront and Full Moon. Like, of course you liked them. You had to like them. They were.
I mean, I liked them enough to continue with the series, but yeah, they weren't a part of my rereads.
Yeah, I just think it's so funny, right? Because I'm like, yeah, I always. But.
Thank you to our Patreon subscribers for your generous support. It's people like you who help us do what we do. If you're not yet a Patreon subscriber, sign up today and get a fuck ton of bonus content, kick-ass merch, behind-the-scenes outtakes, and more. Sign up today at patreon.com/freeflowrambling. Dresden and Michael race to the Cook County Hospital in the Blue Beetle, where the two have an uncomfortable discussion about Harry's love life. The two make it just in time to the hospital to search for the nursery. So Dresden and Michael are racing through the city in a Blue Beetle.
Michael! Hi, Michael! Michael's wonderful. And we jump Stormfront, we start, he's just sitting in his office, chilling, no work. Full Moon, he's sitting down having dinner with him. We're driving through the streets. We're racing. We're flipping up on two wheels. We're boom, right here we go. Hello,
Fast and
Harry.
Furious.
Hello, Michael, whoever the hell you are. Hello, Blue Beetle, giving it all you can.
Zoom, zoom.
Yeah, make a thing. So Michael, we find out Knight of the Cross. And I'm going to say right here, I like the way Michael and his wife and stuff like that are portrayed without going too much into the whole thing. I like how it's not just religion bashing off the start. That's really popular a lot now. And I get why. I mean, the Catholic Church did a lot of horrible things in the name of it. There's a lot of other, but this is right. I don't want to... Yes, but again, not
enough religion bashing for you. Let me step up.
I'm going to stop a second here. But again, at the core of most major religions, I am not a theologist by any means, so don't. But the basic core principles of things are usually good. Be nice to each other, love each other, respect people, don't steal, murder, kill. Those kinds of things are the very basis of most major religions. Yes, they've all been twisted and contorted and whatever the word I'm looking for, to justify people's own means and agendas throughout the ages. So leaving that aside, right, I like that Michael and the Catholic Church here and stuff like that it's plain, it's simple. He's I don't care about all the politics. I don't care about this shit. He's I'm simple. I'm a family man. I have my trust and faith in God, and that's just, and that Harry's able to be I don't really get it, but that, Harry's not anti-religious. He's not anti-Catholic. He's not anti-Christian. He's just, right? He has his
faith
own,
is lying somewhere else.
His faith is, he has his respect for Michael and his beliefs and how those beliefs work for Michael. He's they would never work for me, just because a crucifix is a crucifix is a crucifix, he's that's not going to have the same thing for me that it does for Michael, but because, and I'm it's just nice. I like that we can accept and move on and just kind of have without...
It's a nice basis in this world where, you get Susan and Murphy later on asking, they're well, is there really, a God? Is there really, true? And Harry's I don't know. But as long as you believe in it, that's kind of enough for it to be its own thing.
Power and stuff, too.
Which is a nice, I like how it's presented in these books.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. It's not that he doesn't believe or anything like that, but he's obviously there's evidence of something, so I can't say exactly what, but yeah, exactly, right? It's, again, that inclusivity that, again, we've talked about before. Mm-hmm. If you're going to have werewolves and vampires, why can't you have Norse gods and Greek gods? And again, and I like that he's done that with modern day, because really that's all those mythologies were too, really. They are all pantheons of gods, right?
Yeah, they all came from
were religions, right? So
as much as Greek gods are fantasy for us, it didn't mean it wasn't a legitimate religion at one point.
Exactly, and it's as much as Catholicism is a fantasy for a lot of people in this day and age, right? So I like that, even though that is sort of the current where we are, and that it can be a very, I like how he handled the subject. I like that he did it, respectfully and inclusively, and still let everybody have their
Yeah, Michael and his family, Father Forthill, as we meet more knights and more people of the
Various...
what is it? St. Mary's.
St. Mary's Church of the Angels.
Yeah, the staff and the people involved with it. It's
The diocese.
Yeah, they're all very, like, the very true, like, just be good to thy neighbor, and that's that.
Yeah, they're not, exactly. They're
like
not
you said, there's
all,
no politics. It's just...
Yeah, they're not all the super judgmental. They're not trying to I say they're not trying to convert everybody. They're not, but they are. They're like, I mean, if you want to come over here, we're more than happy to have you. But, you know, even that, like, that's pretty much how we start off here, right? He's like, oh, yeah, I want to meet him. Michael's like, I want to talk to you about something. Harry's like, oh, don't ask me to mass again. Like, you know, I'm just going to say no, like, all uncomfortable. Right? I like that, right? Like, and, you know, Michael's just very... you know, plain, just very frank, and he's like, well, it doesn't preclude you from asking, but not actually, you know, like, again, right, it's always just an open invitation there for Michael, and he will make it, just in case, and so it's like, I love that Michael was just like, he's like, no, it's out there. He's like, just in case, because, you know, who knows that, just in case, maybe you've been thinking about it, maybe if I ask you this time.
He's not pushy about it, but
he's not, yeah, he doesn't, like, you know, harp on Harry that way or whatever, you know, it's like, he does, you know, he makes it a point that they're both very on the level, like, Harry feels very comfortable saying, I don't want to go to church. Michael feels very comfortable saying, I don't like everything about wizarding. I don't really get all of it. Some of it's, you know, not necessarily on the up and up, but...
I was going to say, Michael is the best parts of religion, you know? He's the best things about faith, and in extension to Michael, the rest of his family and acquaintances, right? But at the same time, you know, both Harry and Michael are both very much, like, seeing the best in each other. Like, even if we don't agree with each other's entire jobs, it's like... you're doing yours for the benefit of society, and I'm doing mine for the benefit of society, and for that reason, we can both benefit society together.
Exactly.
They're like, you know, they're like kind of like the most open communication of all relationships in the books.
Yeah, probably. Yes,
Harry has a lot of issues with being on the level with people, but I like that Michael is kind of the guy where, like, Michael too just has that kind of insight where he's like, Harry,
he can just call you on
you can't lie to me,
bullshit.
right?
Exactly.
But even to a point when Harry, like, a lot of the time just doesn't even try. He's like very much... in, I think, a lot of regards, his most honest with Michael.
Yeah. And I think, again, this, a lot of kudos to Butcher, not just for being willing and able to write a character like this, but you have, like, Michael is so likable because Butcher does such a good job of, you know, like, we genuinely, like, you know, he says shortly here to Susan in the next couple of chapters, you know, she's kind of like, what's his story? And he's like, oh, he's a righteous man and he's humble and stuff like that, you know, and Butcher does a really good job of putting that across. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I'm like, Michael doesn't like, I'm so humble and I'm so righteous, I'm going to remind you of it all the time so you know how, you know, I'm like, just the advice Michael gives, the attitude Michael has, just how he encompasses that character.
He's a bit of a perfect character.
He's a bit of a perfect character. But
Butcher did a good job.
He did a good, but not to the point that you hate him for being like,
Well,
Mike.
even like, it comes up in D&D a lot where people don't want to play a paladin because it's just a little bit, it can be hard to play, like, they don't want to fall into like a pacifist role, or they don't want to do like this whole like, always harping on a god or reliant on a god or something like that.
How do you justify what you gotta do? And
yeah, Michael's a really good character for being like,
example,
you can still be role model, example, etc., where if he has to go in the thick of things and use a sword, he does, but at the same time, he's got his unwavering limits. And that's another part about Michael too, where it's like time and time again, Michael is willing to also just say, no, this isn't for me to get involved in.
Yeah.
Even when the shit is pretty rough. And people are like, we need you. And he's like, nope. And that's part of the world that Butcher has built, where it's like, Michael, as we'll learn, you know, he literally can't involve himself in things. Or if he does anything that will break his own faith, that will break his powers or access to it, sort of an idea, you know, right?
Yeah.
And so for Michael, that means if I make God angry, God's going to take away my powers. And for Dresden, that just means if he breaks his own faith, then his faith won't work, you know. And whichever one is correct.
Yeah, comes down to the same
sort of a consequence, right? So I like, too, when it's like, even when the going gets tough, Michael is still so likable when he's like, I'm not getting involved in this. And you're like, but we need you, Michael. But you're also just like so heavy respect for Michael, too. Where you're just
exactly. Because that's the thing, is he does have that line and those things. And that's the thing, is that's what we've talked about Harry. And for good or bad, Harry's more fluid, you know, and this is the thing. This is the, like we've all talked about it, you know, like if Marcone offered you $2 million, would ya take it? Well, geez, when you're sitting in your cold, empty apartment eating ramen, if you're lucky, for, the 27th night in a row, you're like, fuck yeah. And this is where Harry, right? Whereas Michael would always, that's the thing, is he's much more, not that nothing ever tempts Michael, not that nothing, but he is so comfortable and trusting and relying on that faith to, not let him take that that if he has faith, eventually something will come through and something will come out and something will, what I mean? That he's like, I don't have to listen to the temptation because I can, and that's just it's nice. It's that he is able to be sort of much more unwavering in that, whereas Harry's the one that we see wibble and wobble in and out of the...
That's another thing.
Mr. Gray area.
On his training wheels a little bit, Most of the time he's got it and he's on there. Every once in a while he, forgets to signal or cuts the corner on a turn or something, drifts over his lane, but...
Well, it's one more thing about it is that Michael is about 20-ish years older than Harry, too.
I was just going to say,
and he's a little bit more established and more comfortable with who he is as a person just in general, regardless of the faith,
Yeah.
Whereas, I believe Michael's probably been like this the vast majority of his life anyways. But
I was just going to say, I get the sense that this is just kind of
who he is.
Steadfast salt of the earth. But, it's not to say that Michael himself...
40-year-olds are generally more stable than 20-year-olds.
Well, yeah, not to say that, he was exactly a perfect little kid, I'm like, he probably got into a bit of trouble, in his teens or this and that. It's not to say that, Michael never crossed any line, ever isn't afraid to have a bit of, but it's just exactly, he's much more... on the side of being the good kid and doing the right thing and, as opposed to checking out the wild side. Like, it just doesn't appeal to him the same
end
way.
End of the day, a good man.
Yeah, exactly.
Regardless. So, that's just one more point, too, is that, with him being as comfortable with his life, too, he's also one of the characters that we don't see, I guess, like, a lot of growth with, quite frankly, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's just, like, he's kind of the only character in the series who
sort of comes to us
fully developed,
yeah.
Even as we see, like, Murphy and Harry and Susan and, as we'll meet later in this book, Thomas and stuff like that, like, you see huge changes between book 1 or 3 and 17, Marcone too, but Michael, generally speaking, he is the same man throughout the series, which I appreciate. It's just,
It's some of that stability and consistency.
Just totally.
Well, and it was very dangerous of Butcher to write this character the way he did, because it could have come off very badly to have this man in a cape and a sword. But it's so well done that you actually really do believe that he is a knight.
And that's,
like Mom said, like, you don't find this sort of character in a lot of fantasy, sci-fi, generally speaking, when
or
you go to these... Or that's done well, or isn't, like, the joke, or, like, right? Like,
right.
And so, I would say, like, it is very impressive just how well Butcher did with it. And, again, I think that's another part of just how Butcher has, like, you've got the entire world. You can have the whole Greek pantheon and God, and... a million other things all in the same universe, because we've all got it in our same universe. And he also, Butcher tends to not go into the politics too much anyways. Like, you don't talk about, I guess Bush would have been president at this time. Like, that's not a part of the series. That has nothing to do with Chicago and the wizarding world,
that
like
far into the real world things,
They make one political joke, but nothing that was specific.
There was, like, one Bill Clinton financial, or what was it?
The national debt. The barrel looked bigger than the national debt.
But a throwaway debt, like, it has nothing to do with it, right? So even then, for him to even avoid, for him to avoid the politics, even when it is kind of a part of his world, like I said, I think it wasn't just Michael. I think it really his credit to Jim Butcher's entire world that allowed Michael to be so effective as well.
Yeah. And again, as far, like I say, I haven't done as much of the fan stuff or whatever, but again, as far as I can tell, that seems to be pretty popular opinion of Michael as well, that he is really well accepted, and a lot of people do really like him. And again, right, that's just... Again,
I've never heard any Michael hate.
Right. Exactly, and I think just that says so much in this world when there is so much you could say about it, and like you say, just that they managed to keep it separate, and you just focus on Michael as a person, and exactly right, his faith, his magic, his whatever is.
And even when you meet Charity or Father Fort Hill or whatever, Fort Hill.
Sorry.
Even when you meet these other characters who are also Catholics and believing and in it, it's like they're their own characters too. It's not just Michael and Michael and Michael, like Michael 1, Michael 2, Michael 3. Like, you've got all these people who are clearly a deep part of the faith, but their own characters and snappy or this or that, and it's like...
And again, right, in the third, fourth chapter, we meet Charity, and one of the first things she does is, grab Dresden and threaten him, you know? Right. So it's like, she's not like,
it's good variety of characteristics.
Like, they, and I mean, that is kind of a part of the faith and stuff like that, too, if I think you get into some of the turn the other cheek, but exactly stand up for your beliefs and what's, and I mean, that's it, as they seem, Charity and Michael and that seem to have a very firm grasp and a clear idea of, like, this is not okay, and I will kick your ass because this is not okay, and when to turn the other cheek and be like, this is not the time and place to fight, or this is not the person you need to beat on for this. This is when you need to show this person love and understanding to make them change, and this person you need to smack them upside the head to make them change, right? And I love that there is that. A
little bit. Everyone has a dinner plate at their table, but, they might also stab you if you think that's also a necessary part of the dinner.
That seems a little shit, but I get the whole, but they're fully fleshed out and body creatures. They have, they're not just one side. They're not one-dimensional, two-dimensional characters. They are. Yeah. So, we're going along.
So, speaking of your Harry sometimes straying from the path, as they're speeding down the road, Michael's asking if they can go any faster.
And, of course, the Beetle being the Beetle, he's like, we get a good gust of wind or something. But exactly, right? He's like, and this is what I love about Michael, he's like, if the Lord wants us there, he will clear the way, or the car will go faster, and if he doesn't want us to speed, we won't be able to speed, and that's okay. We'll see, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, he's like,
it's unwavering faith.
Exactly, right? He's like, well, normally I wouldn't break the law and speed, but we know there's a situation going on, so if it's okay for me to bend this rule for the greater good, there you go. We can get there.
I just brought up how Doctor Strange told Tony Stark that there's like 14,605 chances to defeat Thanos, but he doesn't tell Stark what they have to do it, obviously, because that'll ruin the timeline or anything like that, right? And if you've seen Endgame, and you, I hope have.
I have.
At this point, it's been out long enough, and if you're a fan of the Dresden Files, you should probably be a fan of the Avengers Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
But there is Infinity Wars is when they do. There's like 14 million, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
But right before they defeat Thanos, Strange holds up one finger to Tony to signal, like, it's happening right now. Like, we're in that timeline. Like,
we're in
you
the
have
one.
to make, and he tells, it's a very emotional scene where he's like, Tony, you're the deciding factor right now. Like, either you die or you don't die, and if you die, we win, and if you don't die, we lose. And it's very emotional, and it's like again, like Tony or Strange wasn't supposed to tell anyone how to do it, or it wouldn't happen, right? But in that final moment, Strange is like, listen, dude, this is what I saw. There was only one chance of us ever defeating Thanos, and it ended in your death. And so Stark doesn't, he dies, and it's very sad, and blah, blah, blah. But my point is that I find very much, like, even Michael is just like, he doesn't know what 14 million chances there are.
Yeah.
But he's very faithful that God is going to always put them on that one chance.
Yes.
So he's like, I don't need to know, because I know no matter what, we're always going to be that number one.
That's,
And if it's not today and it's not tomorrow, it's because that number one chance is in 10 years, and it has to go like this for it to be okay then, Like,
exactly.
he's just...
Yes. And that's what makes him so confident. Yeah.
I think it's also just a little bit more of like the silver lining always to have Michael in the books too, because Michael's a little bit always like, even if we lose today, God has a better plan. He's gonna make it okay. And even when Harry's like, hey, shut up, like, we just fucking lost. We got our shit handed to us. Like, be quiet. And Michael's like, no, it's cool. It's cool. Like, this, like, maybe we didn't save the day today, but like, for all we know, like, it saved your life tomorrow or something like that, right? And it's always a little bit like,
keeps the books from being so dark.
It keeps the books from being dark, just having Michael just that unwaveringly faithful, and it's almost like it's having, like, I don't know, like Butcher wrote his own hype man almost for this series. Like, it's almost like Michael every book is like, it's gonna be okay, guys. Like, I know the books seem really, really bad, but Michael is always here in the background being like, it's good, guys.
True. You always feel, as soon as Michael shows up, you're like, okay, now things are gonna
a breath of relief.
I've never really thought of it, like, specifically, broken it down in my head in those terms, but yeah, exactly. It's fuck, it also makes me think of that in the Buffy musical episode, when during the training montage, when Giles is having his song or whatever, and he's like, I thought I'd be like your stalwart,
the best
standing
song
true.
in this.
He's like, and now I'm standing to the side, and it's just like same thing, right? It's like, that's why Michael's always just that solid presence, that comforting presence that yeah, you know he can't, you know.
It's almost like the father figure that Harry never had.
Exactly.
Even though they're
And
friends, but...
Giles, the father figure for Buffy, and the whole, right, we all want, like, our own parents when we're little, right? That whole moment of adulthood when you realize your parents are fallible and can't fix everything too, you know? And it's just like, yeah, it's just Michael is just that. But yeah, speaking of father, so he's like, I love this because he's like, oh yeah, I want to talk to you about something. And Harry's like, oh, like all uncomfortable. And it's like, oh no, you think you're uncomfortable now? You wish he'd asked you to mass. So,
yes. So as they...
When are you gonna marry Miss Rodriguez? He's like, what the fuck?
I love that moment.
Where
It's
you
just
get off
so
asking
awkward.
questions like this.
I know. And I don't think any of us saw, right? Like, the first couple pages, I'm right exactly. I was, because we don't know Michael. This is all we've seen is they're riding in a car. We don't even know officially Michael's a knight yet. That comes, you know, in a couple more pages when they're, right? But you get, like, okay, like, establishing your character very quickly. Don't ask me to mass again. Oh, okay, he's got some Catholic right? But it's just like he jumps straight to the other, right? He's like, no, so when are you gonna marry her? And you're just like, what, wait, what?
We said earlier on, too, that, like, Murphy is kind of Dresden's best friend, and we referenced at the time, we're like, well, Michael, but we haven't met him yet, we're gonna see. But this very quickly is like, he's close enough to know about Susan.
Yeah.
So clearly they know each other,
They
right?
know each other, yeah, exactly.
Well, and the more that they talk, we realize that he knows about Elaine as well. So he knows a lot of Dresden's history.
Totally.
Yeah.
And stuff that Dresden doesn't even want to talk about.
Yeah,
so
things that we know haven't come up with, like Murphy or Susan, so presumably they don't know these things, right? But Michael is privy, so which does make you like, well, when did they meet? How did they meet? How long? And again, it's one of those things I'm like, I don't know if I ever want to know the exact origin story of, you know, but exactly, it very quickly fills you in. It's been like, oh yeah, these guys go back a ways, you know, whether or not they actually knew each other at that time, but again, they know each other well enough that he knows of that time, you know, which was not as far back for Harry, but yeah.
Even if they met last week, clearly Harry trusts him enough to tell him about Susan and Elaine.
Yeah.
Exactly, right.
But it strikes me that he actually probably was around the period of time when that stuff happened because he doesn't want to ever talk about it. Like, Dresden keeps that so locked away about Elaine.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I go back and forth with that a little bit because in some ways, like, right, you're right. It's not something, and given, you know, again, as you see more of the relationship unfold, because, you know, Michael does pop up here and there, you know, that there definitely could be a strong argument made for however they might have met, you know, when Harry was much younger. But I think, again, sort of my first impression, I assumed, you know, when I was first introduced to this character and first reading this book, I just assumed they had met, you know, maybe when Harry had first come to Chicago a few years ago. So they might have known each, you know, maybe because Harry was 20-ish or something.
Yeah, he was about 2021 when he came to Chicago.
Right. So given we're in the third book, we're looking at maybe a 28-ish year old, right? So they could have known each other for close to a decade now. And again, as you will find out, and as they have conversations here and there, and, you know, like you say, we're talking about how he, you know, almost like a father figure sometimes. And, he, you know, like, it is possible that at some point he could have confided in Michael, right? So I'm like, it's always a little bit, you know, sometimes I'm like, I don't know, I could kind of see them, like, kind of the relationship and the things they know, and because of the difference, you know, I can kind of see that maybe they, like, know each other for that long, but part of me is like, maybe they didn't meet until more, but that also speaks to the kind of bond that they have, that he does know about a lot more of Harry's past, good, bad, and indifferent, than, you know, anybody else that we know of to date and things like that. So I'm always like, yeah, it's interesting.
I've only ever taken it to be when Harry came to Chicago or was even already a practicing wizard. I mean, for two men in their situations, I mean, you know, neither one is walking around, well, Harry actually is going around saying I'm a wizard, but Michael's not walking around saying I'm a knight. Yeah. So I'd have to assume that they would have met on business, or at least one or the other's business, you know, in order for Michael to be like, you know, right? Yeah. Or otherwise Harry would have had to have, like, accidentally found out some other way. Like, it would have had to have been something of that variety, which would make me assume that if Harry wasn't a wizard in the phone book, he was at least doing some shit for the Ragged Angels or something like that led to it,
whatever, yeah.
Or maybe, he came across Chicago and accidentally walked into a troll like day one and Michael came in. I don't know, like, it could have been 100 different varieties, but it is interesting to think, like, had Michael, like, shown up in his youth or something like that, because I'm sure God would have sent him to that moment if he felt that Dresden needed the help, right?
Yeah.
He would have been there to do his work, right?
Coulda, woulda, shoulda, maybe.
Could have been. I don't think it would have been with, like, the Justin moment, because I think that would have come up by now. We've gone over that moment in the series many times, right? And the fact that the council didn't even know.
Yeah.
So for them to, I think it would have come up with Harry had he also been hiding the fact that Michael was there as well,
Yeah, exactly.
But he could have been there at a different point as well, because it's not like Harry was like sunshine and roses every single day. There would have been many a chance for Michael to show up and meet him.
Yeah.
Given the,
crossing of paths or something.
Or even like we know later on that Harry left home at 18, right? And then wandered across America for a while before settling down in Chicago about 2021, right? So even in those like 2-ish year period too, he could have come across Michael elsewhere in the world as well. But otherwise, I would just pinpoint to them having met in Chicago.
In Chicago is, right. It's kind of Michael's home base with his, but yeah, a little bit.
But anyways, so we do get a bit of a timeline too. This is about exactly 1 year after full moon. This is the next Halloween.
Yeah.
So this is...
Oh, I thought it was summer.
Nope.
No.
This is October. Early October. Mid-October.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Late October, I guess.
Yeah, mid to late or something.
Mid to late
I don't
October.
think they ever specifically specify, but I just know because they make the reference of, because someone says, like, did you check the seasonal angle? And then it was like, oh, well, it's like...
Yeah, we're coming up on Halloween
He's
soon.
like, well, we've never had this before. And it's like, no, last year we had werewolves. It's like... So, yeah, it's like I say, I don't know if they ever specify, we never have, like, Halloween night or anything like that.
So this throws us roughly 6-ish months after Bigfoot. B is for Bigfoot.
Okay.
Which we decided, I think, was spring. I think we said was like May or June or something like that.
Still in school or whatever,
Right.
because we said Ghoul Goblin was a few weeks after, and then this was supposed to be a few months after, but still in school, and so I think we said
I don't know if it was in
springtime
January and
somewhere.
June. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't know. Several months into the school year, but not summertime yet.
I don't
so
know. Does it matter?
Whatever.
If we're
It's not the big matter. Just
Yeah.
pointing us how far ahead we're jumping.
Yeah. So another 6 months on or whatever. So
Give or
yes,
take.
lovely little awkward conversation. I love. Oh, you're sleeping with her, are you? And again, it's just he can convey what his opinion of the right thing to do.
The nice thing about Catholics is they have so many tropes that you really don't have to be on the nose with it.
But he has a cute line, right? Like Harry's like, he's like, if you love her, marry her. And he's like, I'm a wizard. I don't have time to be married. And this is when he's like, well, I'm a knight and I have time. And it's just like, right? Like, this is just where he's always very matter of fact and every. But yeah, I
love how invested he is in his love life.
It's
very
not
sweet.
just that. Well, and it's like he says here, right? He's like, Harry. He's like, you of all people should know the power of words and that, right? And like that, like I just love that he's making his point, like making Harry realize, like, yeah, it's not necessarily how long you've been with her or what you guys are doing or what. The point is that, like, yes, you love her. Like, and again, it's sort of, I think, emphasizes a little bit that while Harry is not the same sort of religious or, direct moral compass, but again, it's like Harry's a pretty decent, Harry's not just going around seeing how many chicks he can bang and how many notches he can get in his headboard, right? Like, it's showing, Michael is emphasizing the fact that, like, well, you've been with her for this amount of time, you're sleeping, like, you don't just sleep around for the sake of getting off. So if you're sleeping with her, you love her. If you love her, tell her you love her. If you're telling each other you love her, get me, you know what I mean? Like, he's just sort of laying out the steps for Harry. And again, just sort of shows us a little bit more, too, that really it's like Michael's the one pointing it out, but it's like, this is Harry, like Harry's beliefs and morals and priorities and things like that, and just making him squirm, which is always fun, because I don't always love seeing Harry get bashed. I feel bad for him getting bashed sometimes, but I no objections to seeing him squirm. And this is one of the things I love about Michael. Michael's good at getting us some Harry squirm. So, and again, the same line that I don't know if just this is like one of Butcher's like favorite lines early on, or if it just was supposed to become kind of like a running joke. But Yeah, what?
It belongs on the set of El Dorado.
It belongs on the set of El Dorado. Exactly.
Like, this is the third time or fourth
Faith said, so the first time was technically Stormfront, but yeah, Faith says it to him in Restoration of Faith. Murphy says it to him when we meet her going into the Madison Hotel in Stormfront. Michael now said, I don't think anybody says it specifically to him in Full Moon, but it says it again, and I'm like, was this supposed to be a thing? Like, did you just sort of forget you like this concept?
I think it was in the graphic novel, too.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it was in a graphic novel.
Yeah, I think, what's his name? Carmichael says it.
Does Carmichael say it?
I think
Welcome to the Jungle? Oh, okay, maybe, so there you go for, I'd have to, but I just, I'm like, was this supposed to be a thing? Like, because I'm like, again, it would have been...
There's just one way to describe that jacket.
I was going to say, if it had continued on in, like, every book, then you just would have been like that. It's kind of like, oh God, what is Roadhouse, which is a movie and much shorter, but Roadhouse with Sam Elliott and Patrick Swayze in that. And there's kind of a repeat, what I keep saying about Patrick, they're like, I thought you'd be bigger, because he's like this bouncer guy and really intimidating and really, and then everybody meets him, they're like, I thought you'd be bigger, and right, so that kind of was like the running, right, so I was like, it was almost something like that, because it was like, but I'm like, it doesn't quite carry on long enough, so I'm just like, I don't know if it was just you really like that description.
Harry gets scarier and people get more afraid to say it later.
Maybe that's all, but it's just, but yeah, it was just funny. It was like, that was something that did strike out to me. It's just basically like almost word for word verbatim every time. It belongs on the set of El Dorado.
He spends too much time in the Never Never and nobody's seen El Dorado.
Right, yeah.
There's one part here, though, when Harry is getting upset with Michael and he goes, stars and sky, like, but it's supposed to be stars and stone.
It does eventually. I noticed
he
that.
He says stars and sky.
Yeah. He says a couple different variations, a couple iterations of it. I think we get like a sky and sun or something like that, or sun, and then eventually, it kind of settles down into. So again, I don't know if these are trying out before he finally settled on that or whether it is one of those things where you can sort of, any of these things are kind of wizardly.
Well, the only thing is that we find out from who we don't know yet, Ebenezer, eventually he's like, don't say that, you don't know what it means in regards to stars and stones.
Yeah, and that
specific iteration clearly is like a curse to something very specific, right? So the whole stars and skies, like, is this just Harry being like a dumb kid who doesn't say the phrase right? Or is it really just Butcher who's just like, I don't know what I want it to be in?
Yeah, exactly, right? But yes, I did notice.
Or is this the first further proof of timeline when it was a stars and sky, it wasn't stars and stones, but something changed in it.
God. Like instantly in the first 2 pages.
It starts really quick, guys.
But yes, I did pick up on that this time around too. I was like, I think this is the first time we've heard the variation of that phrase that as it comes up here will become much more familiar to people further down the road. So behind all this sort of banter and lighthearted, we still get that Harry is like racing through the streets. Obviously they're on a schedule. Obviously they get there, Michael's pulling out the sword and you have to keep, and Harry's grabbing his staff and his rod and his dust and his thing and all right, and they go storming in, and it just ends on like the best note ever, like grabs this poor orderly, whose expression is utterly, grabbed the arm of the first orderly I saw. He blinked and then gawked at me from the tips of my western boots to the dark hair atop my head. He glanced at my staff and rod rather nervously and at the silver pentacle amulet dangling at my breast and gulped. Then he looked at Michael, tall and broad, his expression utterly serene, at odds with the white cloak and the broadsword at his hip. And he takes a nervous step back. He's like, baby, can I help you? Yeah, can you tell us where the nursery is? Like, I just love, like, you come this whole big, huge culmination. What a fuck?
Welcome to Grave Peril.
I love that the first time reading it. Yeah. Can you tell me where the nursery is?
I like that you brought up at the beginning how Stormfront started, how Full Moon started, and how this one really hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Because I think, Butcher does a really good job just grabbing you in that first chapter. Like, time and time again. He's always just like, all right, here we are.
Middle of action. And go.
Yeah.
Right? And go. And, yeah.
In another lifetime, he'd be a great director, I'm sure.
This concludes our episode 8.1, Put a Ring on It. Thank you for listening. You can find us online at freeflowrambling.com and McAnally's.ca. There we have links to our other podcasts, social media, and other fun tidbits. Please subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and please consider supporting us through Patreon to keep the magic alive and to see more content. We are Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.